prisoners of war, and people didn't know what to do with their prisoners of war, so they became slaves, you know. And anyway, so evolved from that. That's the way I understand it was, but the idea of the Greek city-state has always fascinated me ever since I first heard of it. A pure democracy, you know, where all the citizens had a vote, you know, and of course they had abuses. Anyway, what was I? These city council was sitting around saying, is there something we can do? I mean, our city is going into decline. What are we going to do to? How is there some way maybe we could get tourists here or something? And suddenly one of the guys says, "I got it. We're Metropolis, Superman's hometown." You know, he just it occurred to him, you know, and say, which of course the people that founded the city probably had never heard of. Was probably back in the 1800s. Superman hadn't even been created, right. But this was a gimmick. The idea that they would pattern it after the comic book city, you know, and have the name their town paper the Daily Planet, like and the Superman, you know, and everything. And so it was using this sort of theme park thing. Just hitting on using this basic coincidence that they happen to have the name for their town that this comic book series had, yeah. You know, and you know. Anyway, you get this is one thing. Apparently, this turned their town around. I don't know how well they did. I haven't. It isn't like Disneyland or anything, you know, but. But you can see how something like that can catch on, and you can develop it into something. They've built up a lot of lore, yeah. About Mount Shasta, which is mostly, I think, fictional, about Bigfoots and flying saucers and underground Lemurians, yeah. from the lost continent of Lemuria, and so all this stuff. But
you don't buy it?
I think most of it has been made up. I think, and it's been promoted, and so there are people that take a lot of people that take it seriously. But I've never heard of any really convincing account of Bigfoots in this area or any of these other things.
No.
But I have seen stories claiming that so and so says that this happened in such and such back in the 1800s or something, you know, and I think it's mostly hype, but that stuff does work, you know.
It's a good gimmick.
It's a good gimmick, yeah, and that even in my mind, I because of the stuff I've read. References in all different works to Mount Shasta, this mystical mountain, and all this stuff. I've been impressed by what is said, but I know that there doesn't seem to be a factual basis involved anywhere. You know, I think I've probably seen about 100 deer. Since I've lived up here, wandering into town in various places, and sometimes as many as half a dozen at once, but I've never seen a Bigfoot, and I've never seen a mountain lion either, a cougar, I think is the more correct term,
right.
For them, and I've never seen one. I've never seen any real dangerous animals. Deer is, I think, the only ones I saw. Well, I think I may have seen some raccoons a few times, maybe. And maybe some possums. What else do I see? Well, squirrels. There aren't very many squirrels, though.
No, there's not. Surprisingly.
I've never understood why these hunters want to kill deer. They're such harmless creatures.
Well, to eat them, right?
Supposedly, but who eats deer? It's not the
hunters.
average. I guess they're the only ones. Maybe that's why they do it, but or maybe that's just a rationalization because I think they like the idea of the killing. I think there is something in human beings that likes killing, and I was not without a violent streak myself when I was young, especially in my teen years. You know, but and even in my army years, I wasn't really very good at it. But I wasn't really that bad either. But of course, if a real tough, big bully type guy came after me, I was screwed. He was gonna, and that happened to me one time in Vietnam.
Oh yeah.
I probably put it in that biographical thing I read.
You talked a little bit about Vietnam in your
your letters.
I
didn't want to do a real biography. I just want to have something that would fit in, that would kind of explain me in a general sort of way.
Yeah.
Without being, and I don't want to say all the bad things I've done in my life or anything like that. But I don't believe in that true confession sort of thing. I also do, but I didn't want to give the impression that I was a saint either, so I wanted to
be real.
I wanted to have an honest, psychologically accurate sort of thing.
Sure.
Which was a sort of a balanced portrayal, but I didn't want to go muddling around in my psychological problems either. But I want to have it. I think you have to have should have some kind of an understanding of the author of a particular work, in a general sort of way. I'm not looking to become famous. As a matter of fact, the idea even kind of horrifies me. I think of guys like John Lennon getting shot down by a fan who was just nuts.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you might be getting into if you get involved in these things. Of course, most authors don't have that problem, but you can never tell where things are going to lead.
Right.
And but anything like that would be probably be something I wouldn't be able to handle too well. I don't think. I'm not talking about my personal character. At my age, I probably wouldn't be. It would have been. I think if I had become some kind of a celebrity when I was young or something, it would have probably been bad for me. It would have been very. I was so immature, which anyway. So if I think it's good that I haven't been successful in the past, because I think now I'm mature enough to know how to handle such a situation if it should arise. And I'm not saying it will. I know artistic people, writers or painters or whatever, you never know how things are going to work out.
That's
Look
true.
at Vincent van Gogh, for example, was an utter failure during his lifetime, ended up committing suicide.
Oh.
And I think he sold a few of his paintings for drinks at the local taverns. I think it's all that he sold during his lifetime.
Wow.
And he was of course he was in a mental institution for a while and stuff, and he was a really messed up fella. He was supported by his brother. What was his brother's name? I forget his brother's name. Not that it's really important, but anyway, got his brother. His brother was very attached to him, and when he committed suicide, his brother declined and died a few months later himself.
That's sad.
It was his brother's wife who was looking through all these painting and saying, I wonder if I could get any money for any of these things, and says, maybe I ought to go consult an expert. And the expert thought that these were great, you know, and anyway, so she ended up becoming a multimillionaire, of course, and his paintings are seen in art galleries all over the world, you know. So you never know how these things are going to work out. See, I'm sure in his lifetime he thought that he was a total failure, you know.
Wow. Isn't that sad?
This is the trouble with our type of society. Doesn't really promote arts and artists and stuff like that, unless it's something that they can even in movies and TV, for example, there's about 10% of all the actors and actresses are constantly working and making a lot of money, where about 90% of them make virtually nothing and are working at other jobs just trying to get by.
Right.
You know, this is a perfect example, and it's all perfectly a matter of chance. It's too bad something can't be done about that. Some governments, of course, generally more authoritarian types, and they tend to, like over the Soviet Union, they had these art galleries, and the only thing that they were promoting was socialist realism, which was politically correct type art. You know, and nothing else. Everybody else, all the other artists were starving, I guess. Anyway, I aired my opinion on that side of thing, probably more than was necessary. But you know, I like I say, I get started on something and I keep going and going. You kick me on the shins or something when I do something like that. I don't know, but anyway. But of course, it's all out. A lot of things are allegorical, and so it's hard to pinpoint these things down. Well, I like this Armageddon thing idea.
Yeah.
I really think all these so many striking coincidences between these Old Testament prophecies and the apocalypse and the events of the 1940s with World War II and Hitler being the I know that sounds like a bizarre idea. It's like you're like a kind of supernatural fantasy or something. But all that I've read about this guy, it seems to it seems to make it appear that there was something really very demonic about him. Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, he was mentally ill, obviously, but of course, sometimes I guess a very liberal point of view would be that evil is a mental illness. To look at it as a sickness in that way, and I don't know how to answer that, whether evil is an absolute thing or not. Yeah. You know, in human behavior, a lot of things are. Obviously, people behave in ways that are self-destructive, you know. But if there are demonic powers that are opposed to goodness and everything, and I like to think of them from my analysis of them from reading psychology books about Freud and Jung.
Yeah.
Jung especially. I like Jung better than Freud, because Freud is too hung up on sex.
Right.
He thinks that was his hang up. Not that many of his ideas have validity, but he just got sidelined, I think, that way.
An odd emphasis.
Yeah, I like Jung's more mystical, pro-religious type of approach.
Yeah.
And I think that idea of depth psychology. Of course, the behaviorists of some of the psychologists nowadays, they react against that way of thinking because it's too spiritual for them. You know, there's this bias in favor of materialism in science, which is so absurd when you come to when you come up with this quantum mechanics and everything plainly shows that materialism just does not work. It does not make sense at all from the standpoint of the evidence of subatomic particles, the way they behave and everything.
Yeah.
But well, what was I saying?
Man.
Oh,
Sorry.
you know,
I lost it too, Phil.
I get kind of too absorbed in
Oh,
all these things.
Armageddon. We were talking about Armageddon.
Yeah. A lot of those things. Like there's the false prophet. There are some they don't really gel that much. Sometimes you would think the false prophet could be Muhammad, which I think was in medieval times. Probably a lot of Christians thought that Muhammad was the false prophet of the apocalypse. That's not too improbable, because look at the way the Islamic militants are going and everything.
Yeah.
It's not too impossible. And then the dragon, I always thought of communist China, you know. China's always been symbolized by the dragon,
Yeah.
you know. And the beast would have been the Soviet Union. But of course, Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't make any difference really, because this Vladimir Putin fella may not be a communist, but he's anymore anyway. But he is obviously some kind of a fascist or something similar. What his ideology is irrelevant. The guy's obviously a totalitarianist.
Yes. I would
know.
agree with that.
So a lot of these things, but I think it was mentioned a lot of times amongst the Jewish rabbis or whatever, that these supposedly prophecies didn't have to happen just once, and sometimes these were patterns which they could be repeated more than once.
Yeah.
You know, I think the thing, you're familiar with the quotation of "Virgin shall conceive and bear a child, and they should call the child Emmanuel," which means God with us.
Yeah.
And this is in the Gospel of Matthew. This is taken to be to refer to Christ, obviously.
Sure.
But see, Matthew's text that he was using was the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament. You know, it wasn't the original Hebrew. In the original Hebrew, the word used did not mean virgin. It was alma, and it just meant a young woman.
Oh.
A young woman would conceive. It wouldn't really make any difference if it's a woman's first time. She's going to be a young virgin when she conceives, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, that's maybe kind of quibbling about words there. I don't know. But anyway, so some of the biblical scholars maintain that this was a reference to the birth of the son of the king who was living at the time of Isaiah, you know. But this does not mean, of course, if you take the idea that some of these things are like allegories or are prophecies that could be repeated, you know. And Matthew obviously took that interpretation, but of course he had the Greek version. But if you're thinking in Greek, the idea of going back to what it was in the original would be irrelevant anyway. And besides that, I understand that a lot of when the Septuagint came out, which was it was before. I think it was I don't know when they came out with it. Whether it was in the first century or before the first century. But it was a popular view that the Septuagint itself was divinely inspired, you know. So if you take that point of view, then what it says in the original Hebrew version doesn't matter, you know. So anyway, that goes to show you the different interpretations you can take about things. But
For sure.
but like I say, the original, supposedly the original Antichrist was Nero,
Yeah.
was believed to be Nero, and there was a popular belief amongst the early Christians that Domitian, the Emperor Domitian, who instituted another anti-Christian persecution, was Nero reincarnated or something, you know. And this is actually suggested in the Apocalypse that the one would be killed but was resurrected or something about one of these rulers, you know, which was obviously a reference to this, you know, this man of sin or the Antichrist.
Lawless one.
The what?
The lawless one.
Oh, that was another one. I think that was one of the epistles.
Yeah.
I think it was called that. Probably John. He wrote. He had two of his letters were mentioned the Antichrist, I think. But he also said that there would be more than one Antichrist. He mentioned that there would be several.
Yeah.
See, so this is a reaffirmation of this concept that prophecies can be fulfilled more than one time. You know,
Seems like it happens
especially
that way.
especially if they're really archetypal type prophecies.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know. Anyway, that's me rambling on and on again. So let's
love it.
see. Oh yeah. So yeah, I want to after a while get into. I think what we've got on the internet is enough to give a general view. I don't want to be
Yeah.
overdoing anything like the world religion.
Yeah.
I mean, although they don't always spell it out. In the West, particularly, that is not spell it out. So that a lot of true believers are really basically materialists, even though they don't think of themselves as such. You know, because they think, or dualists maybe, like Rene Descartes. He tried to reconcile idealism and materialism by maintaining that there were two separate worlds, and that they just happened to coincide with each other because of this God's supervision, you know, which seems to me a highly artificial kind of concept. It doesn't, you know.
Yeah.
But then the guy was writing all this 500 years ago, so 500 or 600 years ago. Anyway, see, what else do we? Oh, the numbering system.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is important here. This will probably tie in with this here. So I don't believe in the idea of saying things have to be absolutely a certain way. I don't believe in this concept of infallibility. I don't believe any human being is infallible. The scientists are sort of aware of that, although not as much as they should be, because a new theory will come along that's proven that disproves an earlier theory, which everybody accepted as absolute truth, you know. And sort of like for example, Darwinism, I think I really see now that it's just plainly false. I mean, he jumped to certain conclusions, and because they seem logical from his way of thinking, you know, and I think that's always a mistake. Of course, in Catholicism, you have a similar sort of thing where the Pope is supposed to be infallible when he's preaching on any matters of faith and morals. This was initiated by Pope Pius IX in 1870, And this guy was I read a book about him sometime recently, and the guy had mental problems. You know, he was actually when he first became pope, they thought he was going to be a kind of a liberal kind of pope. You know, he was going to, you know, but then Italian nationalism came along, and he had a rival in Italy, and it was the Italian state, and they didn't want him to have his own papal states. You know, the popes have for several centuries had their own kingdom of papal states, you know, that were under the direct control, autocratic, dictatorial control of the Pope, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, when Italy became a republic, and they actually didn't become a republic at first. I think they were a monarchy, but they had the king. But they were, I should say, nation. They wanted to have Italy be the absolute power in Italy, the government, in other words, not the church. And so anyway, the upshot was the Pope lost the papal states, and he secluded himself in the Vatican, and then that's when he decided he was going to be infallible in all matters of faith and morals. So he would compensate for his loss of physical authority with a greater spiritual authority, which, you know.
Typical.
Yeah. He became a real reactionary after that, you know. And he had a list of all these modern heresies. One principal heresy which should interest all of us is Americanism. That was one of the principal heresies, with the idea of separation of church and state. He didn't believe in separation of church and state at all. This was a new idea. I mean, now, the church has changed a lot since the 1960s, the Vatican II. This was a real revolution in the church. They're democratizing, you know.
Yeah. Before
that, it was an absolute dictatorship, basically, you know. And I'm getting up on my soapbox. I don't want to do that. I have a tendency to rant and rave on certain subjects, which is unproductive.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Counterproductive. The table of contents thing. So that's really nothing for you to immediately be concerned about. But if I got this back, this means I got all the original booklets back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, but I just have to. Yeah, and then there was something you have to work on yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all right. That's because that's already in here, and this was what I'm concerned. You have it all, the text in there, though, right? Of all the stuff that you need, right?
Yeah. I've got everything I need.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Good. So that's all we need to work. I wanted you to keep this for your reference.
Yeah.
I wrote it down in
perfect.
by hand
Thank you.
for myself to make sure that I know what I'm doing.
So we didn't finish this list though. So you have these other items.
Yeah. I'm interested in your idea about the street fair and
Yeah.
so
We had it we had it yesterday, and
see,
there weren't very many people.
Yeah, I know. I the supposedly what we what I mean.
Yeah.
They obviously want to, they want to insert the idea that the bishops were successors of the apostles of Jesus, and that he had these 12. I think most of these references to the 12 apostles in the New Testament, I think I think the term 12. I suspect it. As a matter of fact, if you look in the Gospel of John, you'll see and he's a kind of a heterodox, you know, one gospel there in some ways. You can see he refers to about 5 of them. There's about 5 close companions of Jesus. I don't think that they were ever called apostles either, you know. And an apostle itself basically meant a missionary. That's basically what it meant. It didn't have the connotations, you know. But all these things were read into these things later on, you know. It's not so much inserting different words or new ideas so much as reinterpreting words, you know, giving them a different meaning and so forth. There's so many subtle ways that they influence things, so that we all, as I as a child and young man, of course, when I read the Bible, I got a very clear idea of what everything meant. A lot of those clear ideas I had then, I realized probably inaccurate, because they were based on what I was conditioned to think these things meant, you know.
Right.
And one great book, I don't agree with his metaphysics, obviously, but his sociologically was the book 1984 by George Orwell.
Yeah.
You know, he really explains all this sort of thing, you know. And this was not, he wasn't making all this stuff up either. He was basing everything that it's in his book is derived from his observations of the totalitarian dictatorship of Joseph Stalin, you know. And almost everything in the story and everything is derived from that, but it's fictionalized, of course. You know, didn't change names and stuff, and of course exploring the ideas involved a bit more than it would appear in any history book, of course. You know, the idea of, for example, the idea of narrowing the vocabulary in the English language, you know, to simplify things as much as possible, so there wouldn't be, so that what they called, what was the term he used? Old speak, I guess.
Something like that.
Yeah. That old speak would be for once they had perfected the language, old speak thinking in old speak would be impossible. This was their goal, you know. So everybody would be perfectly orthodox, and there would be no freedom of thought at all, you know. And to some extent, this was a perfect example of this in reality, outside of fiction, meaning, was Joseph Stalin's, you know, dictatorship. You know, he had all these people that he'd purged and had opposed him, getting up there and then being brainwashed and everything, confessing all their sins and about how terribly wrong they were, and about how Stalin was, you know, was infallibly correct and everything, you know, and all this stuff. And they had these big propaganda trials and everything, and it was really fascinating with that worked out. But I think to some extent the church did that too, but much less sophisticated way. You know, especially during the Middle Ages, with the witch trials and everything, the trials of witches and heretics, and, you know, and everything. Sometimes the sole goal of the inquisitors was to get a hold of the property of the people that they had charged, and that they were only interested in their money and their property, not really in enforcing doctrinal purity so much. But they also did that too. But the whole goal was political power. You know, it wasn't. It's very obvious if you go look back in the history books at the heresies that were most vigorously prosecuted were those that involved a diminution of church power. but that conflict was there right at the beginning, I think, between St. Paul and other more legitimate religious teachers of Christianity, and the. I'm not saying that it was monolithic. I think there were a number of different interpretations. I think what corresponds to what we would think of as most traditional Christianity, basically, would be what we think of as in the teachings of St. Paul. I mean, Jesus himself, whose public life only lasted about 2.5 years or thereabouts, so most of what we have is what people wrote about him rather than what he actually wrote. But I'm getting way off the subject here, which I do all the time.
Where were we? How did we get there? I don't even remember where we left off.
We were talking. Oh, yeah. I want to get my own. But I have to have the mail available. I don't want to take this while you're still working on it.
No, that I'm done with.
Oh, you're finished with
Yes.
this one?
Here's
This
the type.
Is this the one that's? I didn't think you were done with it. This is the color Genesis.
Yeah, that one wasn't too bad.
This is what I wanted to do. I think to have a more chronological order. Like over here. See, the original way I had this was by itself. I had it. But I think it's more up to date. Some of the stuff in here kind of overshadows, but I don't want anybody to be taking this literally. I think I wrote in there in the title so that people won't think that I'm insisting that I believe these creatures exist. This is everything I think about it is a probable. I had a word I was going to use. I hate that one.
I don't feel like I have Prelude to Genesis.
This is Prelude to Genesis.
Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah,
then
more of the universalistic type of thinker again. So Hegel. Anyway, now Marx claims he found Hegel upside down and he turned him right side up. Right? In other words, reinterpreting things as what was called dialectical materialism, which he never actually in none of his writings does he actually go into the metaphysics at all, really. Which I find rather puzzling. He just takes for granted this idea of scientific materialism. He just takes it for granted.
Right.
Without materialism.
Hegel.
Huh?
You just mentioned Hegel.
Oh yeah, Hegel. Oh yeah, and Karl Marx. He claimed he turned it upside down, but of course he doesn't have any metaphysics in his. He just assumes and takes for granted the materialistic philosophy. Which is kind of bizarre. I've never read any book by or about any scientific materialist type philosophy, if you can call it a philosophy. They don't have any they don't have any explanation for anything. They just take for granted
Right.
this basic belief that they have in materialism. You know.
They haven't considered any other option.
No,
Like, it's
no,
just- yeah.
no. But to me, I remember when I was in seminary, I was reading books on philosophy at the library. I understand the entire thing there, and oh, let me throw this stuff.
So many vendors went to Montague, and they didn't want to deal with the heat, and we figured we wouldn't have very many customers because of. Think you would. Yeah. So it just seemed like reasonable to cancel. Yeah, I emailed Matt.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about Descartes. Rene Descartes. What? I don't agree with most of Descartes' thinking because
I don't know much about Descartes.
most people most people don't nowadays. But he kind of envisioned a dualistic universe, you know, of mind and matter, which do not interact, but according to this theory of his, God supervises the whole thing, and so that the actions of like individuals, for example, they're what their bodies happen to do is always corresponds to what their internal intentions were. I don't agree with that theory. I don't believe in dualism. I think the idea of dualism is a bit absurd. But I think what interested me most about Descartes, not most of his later stuff, but it's his initial ideas. He was the one that initiated the popular phrase "cogito ergo sum," I think, therefore I am. You know, in other words, and this basic premise of his is what I think is best about him, about his philosophy. The rest of his is too highly speculative. Yeah, it does. There's obviously a connection there. But anyway, his idea was that basically his consciousness his consciousness was proof of his own existence. You see, after and this is what he meant by I think therefore I am, you know, and but of course after he gets beyond that initial part, he starts getting highly speculative, and you know, and I don't buy his dualism, but I do think he was a profound thinker in his initial stuff. Anyway, but the thing is, the problem is, I once read a short story, and maybe this is where this may have been where I originally heard about this concept. was from this short story. I don't know who wrote it. It was a sci-fi fantasy type thing, I guess you'd call it.
Okay.
You know, and in this, the title of the story is Solipsist. I don't know if you're familiar with that word. It's derived from the Latin sole ipse, only, sole only, and ipse the self. You know, and the idea is, if somebody really believed this, he'd have to be locked up in a lunatic asylum. Really, I think, you know. So, I mean, if he was a real solipsist, I'm saying, because a solipsist believes, supposedly, theoretically anyway, that the only thing that exists is his own consciousness, and everything else is like a dream or something, you know. There was a short story. I think this is where I first came across the idea. Was in this sci-fi short story, sci-fi fantasy, I guess you'd call it. Where is this about this guy? The name the guy is given in the story is kind of a dead giveaway to the ending of the story, so I'm not going to mention it because it's going to be pretty obvious. Anyway, there's this fellow. He was a solipsist, and anyway, so he decided one day he went up to his hotel room or wherever he lived, and he decided he was going to put his theory of solipsism to the test. And so what he does is he I don't know, concentrates or goes into a deep trance or something. I don't know what the details of that are, but anyway, so he concentrates, and see, how's this go? He looks out at the sky, at the stars, and he concentrates, and he wills the stars to disappear, and bingo, they disappear. And then he concentrates on the world around him disappearing, which it does, and he finds himself floating in empty, dark space, you know, with nothing, and except his consciousness. Oh yeah, and his body. I forgot. He had to will that out of existence too, of course. And anyway, just at that point, he hears a voice saying, "Well, I was waiting for somebody to do that. I was waiting for somebody to do that. I guess I can retire now." And, you know, and this is supposedly God, or what was God at that point, you know. And so anyway, it ends up he ends up and he has nothing else to do or anything to think about or anything, so he decides to create a universe, you know. and then it ends up, it took him 7 days, but that's an inaccuracy. People say 7 days, but the seventh day was the day God supposedly rested. So it doesn't. So it was 6 days actually. But anyway, Anyway, so it's a kind of it's what bugs me about this theory is it's impossible to disprove, you know, which is
I suppose.
it is, yeah. But I was thinking about.
Nowadays they have the simulation theory that we all just live in a simulation. It's
Oh,
just,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, new,
yeah.
new terms for old ideas, I suppose.
That's an interesting theory too. I mean, it's obviously an outcome of the whole computer business.
Right.
Computer,
Kind of like we're living in a video game of sorts.
something like that, and that also is difficult to disprove. You know, the thing that gets me is that when you're asleep and you're dreaming, you believe that dream is reality. You know,
In the moment, yeah.
Yeah, you do. You do. Once in a while, you have what's called a lucid dream.
Yeah.
Those are really fascinating. It happened to me on a few occasions, long decades ago. Damn. What was I? Oh, about lucid dreams. Yeah. If the thing is, if you realize that you're dreaming, you can control the dream.
Yeah.
You see, and this is what's really fascinating. I remember one time I was walking down a corridor in this junior college I was temporarily attending. Anyway, in the dream I was walking down this,
Yeah.
and I suddenly realized that I was dreaming, you know, and then I remembered what I'd read about lucid dreams. That once you realize you're dreaming, you can control the dream, you know, and this was really a fascinating experience. Anyway, so in this dream, I'd been reading about out-of-body experiences and stuff like that. Well, I had a few myself. I don't know whether what I was reading was a catalyst for the experiences or vice versa. I don't know. But anyway, this is some notations I've made about this street fair
Great,
thing.
yeah.
Maybe you could.
We can talk about that. I'm down.
Okay, if you want, we could talk about it now, I guess, if you want, or
Whatever.
or some whatever. It doesn't.
I got no agenda today, so
Oh, good. I mean,
which is nice. It's like
it's
really
always
good.
good to have. Did I put authorized biography?
I don't know. It's in your book. Whatever's there.
No,
is-
oh, okay.
is
Oh,
on
oh,
here.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
Right here.
Oh, yeah. I wrote it in there.
And of course, these page numbers are inaccurate. But when we're all done, you know,
Oh,
if we
yeah.
want to
Well-
adjust
Well,
those, we can.
it's probably not going to make any difference on the internet anyway. would it?
Exactly. You're right.
I mean, the page numbers. This would. Let's see. Well, I'll go through this later.